Welcome to another episode of Wellness with EAC. I am Nicole Guanzura, and I have the privilege of being your host. On this side of the podcast internet, we talk about all things career wellness, our faith journeys, and how that intersects with our personal and professional lives. You're going to see that this episode is a bit of a different vibe. My friend and colleague Jonathan and I are just chatting it up about entrepreneurship. We are talking about just being business owners, being who we are to the people in our lives and our clients and the work that we do, but also how we play different parts in our families. He shares such a powerful, humanizing journey and description of who he is and what wellness means to him. And also talking about if he has any regrets, at all in his journey so far. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I think it's such a timely conversation as we are getting ready to wrap up Mental Health Awareness Month. But more than anything, I think it's a conversation that's really important to have as we continue this journey. So let me know what you think. So I think it's just so important that, you're recognizing the joy and the ups and the downs of who you are, where you are, even as it scares you, because how will you know
Mm-hmm.
that that is what works for you? How will you know that this is what your clients want to see? This is what's fulfilling for you. This is what
Mm-hmm.
maybe you want to walk away from. How will you create that perfect course or
Yeah.
whatever it is if you don't try it? And
Mm-hmm.
that has been my intrinsic fear,
Mm-hmm.
actual fear of, okay, you know what, it scares me, so I'm just not going to start,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay in my cocoon. But then I look and I say, okay, so what if I go live and nobody shows up?
Mm-hmm.
So what if I, have one person show up? Then, hey, they just got a free one-on-one session and we're able
Yep.
to talk. But what can I collect out of this? How do I make the most out of my situation and my experience? How do I gather data around this to improve what I'm delivering, how I'm chasing my
Mm-hmm.
purpose? And so I've loved seeing that in you and
Mm-hmm.
just showing up over these, last couple of years, but just the evolution of knowing you over these last couple of years, in just the way you're showing up. So kudos to you. Like,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
mean, I don't know, but it's
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's really
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. You said a few things there that I think could be helpful, and if this stays in, dope. If not, okay. But like, there's the you said something about like that inner critic or that inner voice, and I've been thinking a lot about that over the last like 6-ish, 7, 8 months, and I wrote something about it a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, but it was about the inner critic and how
Mhm.
I was reading a blog about it and how oftentimes, not everybody, but oftentimes
Mhm.
that inner critic is born or emerges from, our childhood, right?
Yeah.
Or some event or something like that. For me, that's absolutely true. Like middle school Jonathan, I've named my inner critic Johnny. And so shout out my friend Desiree Morton, who like did some coaching with me a couple years ago around this. But I
Mhm.
used to like be very angry and upset with that, with my inner
Mhm.
critic Johnny. Like I would yell at him, I would, get on him, like stop, get out of my head, blah 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 blah.
Right.
But oftentimes like that person rears their head, like whether it's like anxiety for me, that's how it shows up, or fear
Mhm.
of doing something, and so I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But what I've found since I've like interacted with that, with my inner critic a little bit more compassionately, is like um when I was a middle schooler, I was like incredibly insecure,
Mhm.
super nervous. Like I had just moved from a school where I knew everybody, all the teachers, all the administrators, because I'd been there. since like kindergarten or first grade or something like that. And then
Yeah.
I got plucked in the middle of sixth grade, and then all of a sudden I'm in middle school, right? So I went
Mm,
from elementary school to a junior high, and I'm lost in this new city in the middle of the school year. And so I was incredibly insecure, so lonely, isolated, stuff was going on at home, like all these different things.
mm-hmm.
And all that Jonathan wanted to do was like have that same level of confidence that he did before, be safe,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever. And so what I realized about Johnny is that Johnny's just trying to keep me safe. Johnny's
Mm-hmm.
trying to prevent me from feeling all the things that he is currently feeling now.
Yes.
Um, and so instead of yelling at Johnny and like I just imagine myself yelling at myself. I'm like, dang, dude. And so I've just decided to show Johnny a little bit more compassion, and what that has turned into is me listening and hearing and giving space for myself to feel fearful, to feel anxious and
Mm-hmm.
navigate those experiences and feelings.
Yeah.
Um, but then I say, we are going to do this anyway. We're going to try it
Right.
anyways. And I'm teaching my inner critic, I'm teaching Johnny, my middle school self, courage
Yeah.
and showing him bravery, all the things that I wanted before. And so, um, yeah, I think that fear can teach us a little bit about ourselves, where sometimes we feel like fear is this negative bad thing, but if you
Mm-hmm.
are not in physical harm's way, then like keep going, keep like inching forward, be
Yes.
aware, but that I think fear is supposed to give us an awareness and a heightened like ability to look around,
Right.
not hold us in the same spot. And that's what I've been trying to. I realized about myself for the first 2 years of my business, I was staying put, and I wanted
Mm.
to start moving forward. So I've just leaned into the fear a little bit, and embraced Johnny and heard him out and give him the space that he needs. But we're gonna do this anyway. Like one thing at
Yep.
a time, courageous and daring experimentation. We're just gonna try it and see what happens. So yeah, that's what came up as you were sharing that for me. So I really appreciate that. But that's kind of like the journey I've been on the last, yeah, a couple years, but particularly in the last like year and a half
Mm.
with this business. It's been, yes, it's been something, I'll
Yeah.
tell you.
You know what? And that courageous and daring experimentation, I need that. I need to put that on something. I
Yes.
need you to put that on a t-shirt,
Yes, yes, yes. I got a
and then
whole list
sell
of
it back to
pieces.
me.
Yes. I love that.
Because it's so important. And that human side, right?
Mm.
And I want you to also tell the people from which perspective you are speaking, because Jonathan, as you right now, is an IO psychologist. So,
Mm.
people, for the people, and a certified career coach.
Yes.
So, he's going to bring some context
Mm.
around who he is now, right? But that
Mm.
background is so important. And I think for, um, business owners, right? And just folks who are just seeking their careers, and especially in a path where we just live in a very free world to not have a linear career path
Mhm.
anymore. And
Mhm.
so we can come from certain structures. Jonathan and I share a higher ed background.
Mm.
That was one of the things that connected us when we initially met. And so coming from higher ed, there's typically a structure and a cadence of where you go through things. Whether you start off as a coordinator, then you become an assistant director, then you're an associate director, then you become a director. And then from there, you can be a senior director, whatever the cadence is. Or honestly, more times than not, you can go from associate director of this section of the company to
Mhm.
associate director of this section of the company. There's a lot of these lateral moves around. And so breaking out of that for me was a call to freedom and embracing that fear, because
Mhm.
I quit my job with no other plan but just to rest my mind. And
Mhm.
it's such a timely conversation that we're having right now in May during Mental Health Awareness Month, because I needed a timeout,
Mhm.
a full on timeout. But what was to come from there, when I started reflecting and I see, oh, mom's an entrepreneur, dad's an entrepreneur, my brother-in-law's an entrepreneur, and just all of these people around me, that perspective started to shift.
Mm.
Oh, that makes so much sense when they went through that season because I'm doing that. Let me go
Yeah.
talk to that person. Oh, let me go network with people who are in similar spaces. Or let me go find out what this person who has 10x, who's
Mm.
taken the leap, embraced their fear, and literally just flew out at something and either it crashed and burned,
Mm.
but they learned something from it. So they were able to shift. It's just been a really, really interesting journey to be. But I think there's so much wellness, that's so many aspects of wellness that factor into that space. But
Mm.
before we go too deep into that, Jonathan, give the people a little bit of a background. Tell them
Yeah.
who you are. You know, who is Jonathan post Johnny the middle school inner critic?
Yeah. I've settled on, well, first, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. I remember some of our first conversations around you thinking about this like a year and a half ago. So this is like
Yes.
dope that it's coming and
Yes.
happening. But who is Jonathan? So I always love to lead with my humanity first. And I do that because I think I am not my work. I love what I
Mm,
do. I'm a business owner. I love what I do, but I am a multifaceted, complicated human being. And so I always love to lead with that first. And I think it
mm,
gives a really clear introductory and cool connection when I do that. And when we
yeah.
do that. So I am the oldest of three, raised by a single mom
Mm,
for a good portion of my life. She was a hustler, an incredibly empathetic person, joyful person. And so all of those values of like do what you got to do to take care of your family and take care
hmm.
of yeah, those around you,
Yeah.
you do it. You do it, you do it, you do it, you do it, you don't complain. And then but like do it with a smile. Like don't forget the people around you. Don't just
Mm,
because you're having a bad day, you don't need to spread that. And so those are kind of the values that are instilled in all three of my brothers, or all three of us. I'm a husband. Me and my
mm,
partner live in Southern California, here in the US, in LA. And we've been together for 10ish, almost 10 years. Yeah.
yeah.
It's married for 7.
Hmm.
And she's just wonderful. So we always have good times, love to travel. And then I am a neurodivergent person, so I have ADHD. Um, and you will see that come out
Hmm.
as I talk as we have a conversation. You will definitely
Yeah.
see it come out. Um, but yeah, all those three things are incredibly important to me. But what I do for work, and I'm so thankful that what I do for work what came out of what who I am, like
Mm,
my family, my friends and all that. And so I'm an organizational psychologist. My specialty and emphasis is leadership development and organizational culture. Those two ideas meld together. Um, I am a certified career coach, helping Black millennials experience career joy
mm,
through my career joy framework. And then I am also a podcast host. So I've been hosting a show for the past 4 years. It's called Highly Visible and a Little Misunderstood, where we
yes.
have nuanced conversations about complex things. You can find us everywhere. But that's a little bit about me and the work that I do. But I'm really excited to be here and talk through career wellness and all the different things.
Yes. Thank you for that introduction. I think one of the inspirations for this podcast was just to humanize the experiences that we are seeing all around us. When you're
Mm.
reading someone's bio, besides the little like extra sentence of on the weekends, I like to hang out with my dog
Yeah.
and, go hiking, you don't really get to know who a person is or
Mm.
what makes them who they are. And so often, what that does, at least what it's done for me, was I used to then put this person, that saying when they say, like, never meet your heroes, they're just going to
Mm.
fail you. But that's because you're putting another human on a pedestal.
Mm. Mm.
And you need to see them as a real human,
Yep.
human to human. What is
Yep.
their background like? What does their experiences, how does that contribute to who they are today? Because
Mm.
that's what's also going to help you in business. are you going to align with working with that person? What are their
Yep.
values? Yes, no matter what their business is about, but is this somebody that at the core you could recommend? Is this someone you could collaborate with? Or,
Mm.
is this a company that I want to work for or work
Yep.
with because I know what goes into it?
Hmm.
Is just so important. And so that's really when I also talk about career wellness in general, I think it's important that we're talking about the human side of that professional development journey, seeing real things that people go through with their mental health, that people go through with their finances and balancing life and the things that affect them on so many different spectrums is so, so
Mm.
important. So I appreciate you and this really just beautiful synopsis of who you are.
Mm.
And there's still more aspects to it, right? Have you ever read
Yeah.
somebody's story and you're like, oh, okay. And then you hear it again and you're like, wait, I learned something new. And then you
Yep.
hear
Yep.
it for the seventh time and you're still picking up gems.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny. It's so true. Because every now and again, I've like landed on the way that I introduce myself with like the husband, brother, son, and
Hmm.
then talking about with passions. But every now and again, I like to, change it, add a little something in there. Um, one of the things that always shocks people is that
Hmm.
I'm 6'3". So not a lot of people like realize that. So when I meet people,
I
that
did
I've been
not
talking to
know
in
that.
virtual, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meeting people
Okay.
virtually and then they just go like, "Oh my goodness, you just keep on going, don't you?" So that's always a funny thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then then like I grew up singing, so like that's another
Mhm.
thing that I just love to do, still do to this day.
Yeah.
So it's just all kinds of things that you get to know and hear and learn about people. It's just got to take the time. Yeah.
Key. That is key. Taking the time. We rush through so many pieces and we think we know somebody because of whatever curated version of themselves they've given us online. But
Hmm.
if you don't take the time, or if you're just like, okay, you know what? I've gone months and months and I've kind of seen the person post, I've seen the person do this, so therefore there must be fine.
Yep.
But if you don't take the time to slide into a DM and say, hey, how are you?
Yep.
What's going on? How can I support you? Or
Hmm.
just, hey, how are you? Is a good
Yep.
start as well, right? And then either the response is, hey, I'm doing just fine, or hey, you know what? I could actually use a catch up. It's been a minute.
Hmm.
And things come out of that. So I think that's really important when it comes to, just taking your time. So, Jonathan, in this season of your life, what is one thing you find yourself being really, really proud of?
Well, before we talked about a little bit in the beginning, and before we started recording, but
Mhm.
I am just um, very proud that I am finally being a business owner,
Mm,
um, and like owning it as my job and my profession. I think the first
mhm.
2 years of it, I was not doing that, and I didn't realize that I was doing that. But there
Yeah.
was kind of like this disassociation that I was feeling, and it was coming honestly from a place of fear.
Mhm.
Um, And I think if you are able to distance yourself, like it limits the hurt.
Yeah.
And in my case, um, the fear of failure and the all of the pain and hurt that comes with that, right? The sacrifice that my partner's
Mm.
making, sacrifices that I made.
Mhm.
Why did I leave a really good paying job for for this, Um, uh, like we could have gone the trips, done the things, right? And
Yeah.
it's just all those different things. But I'm proud of like, the perseverance that I'm having and like we're fine, we
Mhm.
are fine um in all aspects, but I
Yeah.
think there is, yeah, where I'm at now, I'm just like really proud of like I feel like I know what I'm doing for the
Mhm.
most part, or at least I have a direction. um
Yeah.
and I'm excited about talking about what I talk about all the time.
Mm.
I get pumped up when I have an opportunity to be on a podcast or do a
Mhm.
LinkedIn live or collaborate with folks and do that, and I'm good at what I do. So that's the thing too, is like I've always known that I'm good at this, but like now
Mhm.
I'm like I'm sure that I'm good at this and just got to keep going. So that's what I'm really proud of, that I'm like a business owner and this is my
Yes.
job. And I say that
Yes.
and it's true.
Yes, there's a couple of things in there that surety
Mm,
in what you do and loving what you do. And I thank you for also acknowledging that business, being a business owner is a job.
hmm
It is a job when you are in so many facets of the business, inside the business, outside of the business, hiring people, connecting with people, putting out products, putting out services, connecting with clients. It is a whole job.
Yep.
And I think when we look at the grander perspective, there are so many organizations that started off as just a small business, just a mom and pop shop,
hmm
just a this and that, right? According to society. And where they are today is unimaginable.
hmm
Where they are today, for those that have survived, right? Because it's not easy
hmm
at all. For those that have survived and have been able to change different sectors of how we think of things around us, products we use, services we embrace, it's just so valuable
mm
to think about. So I appreciate you just acknowledging that being a business owner is a job.
Yep.
So, speaking of that job and bringing the human experience, I know there's no typical day, but
Mm.
what does it look like in a typical weekday for you as a
Yeah.
business owner?
So what I'm really trying to do is like have a consistency in my mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Like as I mentioned, neurodivergent, like ADHD. And so like routine is very helpful for me to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that I um stay on track and get things done, right? If I
Yeah.
just go into a day that's like nothing's on my calendar or I haven't planned something out, it's not gonna be good.
Yeah.
So, but the consistent thing that I do every single morning is like I try and get up early, because
Mm-hmm.
I like to have a quiet like space in the morning by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'll just go either make some tea or make some coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I just put on some like lo-fi music while I do that. I might
Mm-hmm.
do some leftover dishes in there while my coffee is steeping. But
Mm-hmm.
I just have like coffee or tea in the morning, and I just sit at the table listening to music. Or if I'm in the mood, I'll watch like some of my favorite YouTubers. Just like it's my time, and
Yeah.
I literally like will have an hour of like my time doing what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's sitting on the couch, stretching, those different things, like just slow, starting the day
Mm-hmm.
slow. And then I'll typically, answer some emails. I might have some calls with some clients or collaborations or events and stuff like that, do that prep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, usually it's really that, but I do try and like get out of the house, go for a walk, um, do some client work, research, because like that's my main, that's where I'm trained in. So
Mm.
that's kind of like the day. It's really interesting because like a lot of times I'm like, oh my gosh, like everything I'm doing right now, it doesn't feel like work or it's not
Yeah.
making me money, right? Quote unquote.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But I would be, but the things I'm doing, researching,
Mm-hmm.
having a client call, meeting with potential partners, or just doing a catch up where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on with you? Oh, I know, and making connections like that, being on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, like those are, I would do that for another place. So it's like, yeah, that's part of my job. So that's kind of multiple days inside there.
Mm-hmm.
But typical day is like that's what it looks like for the most part. Yeah, for
For
the
the
most part.
most part.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have a follow up to that because, yeah, it depends on the week, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage? Because for a lot of us as business owners, you'll find that a lot of networking is business after hours,
Mm,
or there's a webinar, or there's something, but it's going to demand your time after 6 o'clock.
yeah.
How do you manage that?
Huh. That's a good question. I really try and have like boundaries around my work
Mm-hmm.
too, because the first year I tried to work like I was still at a like 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever, and like
Mm-hmm.
I think very few people operate that way, and I definitely don't
Yeah.
operate that way. Um, because my brain will go off from it turns off 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, like it just
Hmm.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then I turn back on around 5 or 6. So the how I manage those extra stuff is
Hmm.
I make sure that the if I'm going to do that event, if I'm going to meet with
Hmm.
this person, if I'm going to go to this place, then
Hmm.
it's going to be with people that I actually want to be around.
Mm.
Because like if it's with people that I want to be around, that the like something you said, values align, these are people that I want to collaborate with, that I want to
Right.
support, different things like that, that actually even challenge me and push me to think differently, to grow. Um, then that is actually stimulating to me. Like that motivates me
Mm.
to make the
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
Calendars are my best friend, and so I try and like calendar and space that time out too
Yep.
to make sure that I'm not yeah, I don't double book or like forget or whatever. Um, but I try and like create space and like
Mm.
have um what's the word? Create space, but like
Hmm.
like that is a space I want to be in. That's just
Okay.
really important to me. So like, yeah, if that makes sense if that answers your question, I hope it does. But that's kind of
Yeah.
like how I balance it out. Because if I don't want to be there, then it's gonna be really hard for me to like make the time and like want to go. Like it's I used to force myself to try and go to places and
Right.
think it is going to be beneficial. And when I get there, when I try and force myself, sometimes it works out and I'm surprised, right?
Hmm.
But like sometimes my gut and intuition tell me something, and I'm like, I should have really listened to my gut because like I am meet nobody. This is not the event for me. This ain't it. But anytime I've
That's
made
it.
and created time and like made sure that that space aligned with who I like the direction I wanted to go in, or at least wanted to
Hmm.
grow in at least, um, it's always paid off, honestly. And so it's always been worth it in that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. It answers the question.
Yeah.
And one of the key things you said was around boundaries, right? Setting those boundaries around, okay, this is what I'm going to allow into my schedule.
Mhm.
I do that with my Calendly. You know, if I give you my calendar, there's just certain days. More than likely, I might switch the day, but there's usually one day a week you cannot schedule me. And
Yep.
on Fridays, sometimes I'll open that up, but it's only half day. But usually, too, Fridays, I leave those for catch up calls to only talk to people I really like. If I have a catch up with a colleague or a friend,
Hmm.
let's chat on a Friday because I can do this. Or there's
Hmm.
things I'm going to be heads down in. I know that nobody's going to show up on my calendar on a Wednesday
Yep.
unless I put it there because that's how I've blocked off my boundaries, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's so important to have those boundaries and also knowing when to just say, okay, you know what? No, that's not going to work for me. I just came off like a 2 month networking hiatus. I didn't want
Yeah.
to hear about it, didn't want to go do it, didn't
Yep.
have the energy for it. I was just in a busy season of life. And my husband was really busy at the same time. So, childcare and different things look so different for us that
Hmm.
I just didn't have any extra of me. And initially I felt bad because I'm like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? My business is going to fail. The rule book says network all the time.
Yeah.
But, there's also risks of my parenting failing, my
Yeah.
marriage failing,
Yeah.
my balance at home failing because I don't know how to set boundaries and say no.
Hmm. That's it.
So,
The no. It's the no. It's really the
so
no.
no.
Yeah. I learned that like not every opportunity that's given or that shows up on my doorstep or like I've see or come across are worth it. And even if it is a really good opportunity, again, compared to some of the other things that I need, the space that I want, the rests that I need,
Yeah.
um, that no can be a powerful thing, and that opportunity, as good as it is, another one will come, and trust that another
Yeah.
one will come. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think sometimes those opportunities come and they're silently just distractions.
Hmm.
And they're not even really an opportunity. And I think once you kind of mature in a certain season of entrepreneurship, there's just this awareness of like the confidence you have in yourself and your abilities and knowing exactly what you just said that something else is going to come, right?
Hmm.
And an even better opportunity, it's going to come. You don't know when, but you're going to keep pursuing, but it should be okay to say no, right?
Yep.
And set boundaries around that. So, I'm just thinking, I know we could talk forever,
Yeah.
but I'm like getting down to the last couple of questions. I got about two more questions for you here. But thinking about your journey, right? You shared so openly so much of your journey. Is there anything that you would do differently when you're reflecting on your journey so far? Either could be just in general life
Mm.
or in your business journey so far.
Yeah. I I've interestingly I've thought about this question a lot even before you sent over the questions
Mm-hmm.
around like regret, around
Mm-hmm.
would I think about would I do anything differently? And there's a
Mm-hmm.
step in my career joy roadmap where I talk about, acknowledging where you're at, reflecting back on past experiences, like
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about that? And even I talked about earlier about the inner critic, right? And my
Mm-hmm.
inner critic always loves to talk about shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, I think I've gotten to a place where I am okay with the decisions and the things that I've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there are things that I really wish knowing what I know now that I did differently, right? That I would
Mm-hmm.
have, chosen a different college for
Yeah.
undergrad um or ask for help sooner or
Mm-hmm.
did all those things, right? But it always comes down. I always come back to would I be the same person I am today? Would I have
Yeah.
learned the lessons that I did today? And I got to be honest, I don't know. I don't know if I would have.
Right.
And I think I'm slowly inching toward being okay with the decisions that I've made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like living a life without regret, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, that feels right to say. Like
Yeah.
it feels odd like being like somebody who's younger to be like, yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
living a life that I do not regret. I don't regret the
Right.
decisions that I made.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that like I make a decision
Mm-hmm.
and like I can learn from it if it doesn't go the way that I thought it was. And so yeah, that's
Yeah.
where I'm at. I know it's not like this groundbreaking thing, but I think I think I'm just looking at my past self and past decisions with a level of like
Mm-hmm.
compassion that I'm hopefully trying to yeah, give to others,
Yeah.
but like honestly like be okay. Like just be okay
Yes.
because I'll spiral about the decisions that I didn't make or made and they were
Mm-hmm.
terrible. Um and so not at a place of an unhealthy place of like avoidance or anything like that, but
Yeah.
like just really holding space for myself in that yeah, just you made that decision.
Yeah.
You experienced those things at that school, that job, everything like that. Do I
Mm-hmm.
very wish I did something differently? Absolutely. But who I am today, like I'm just so proud of who I am today that I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to change anything in the past to change who I am right now.
Right.
Because I've finally gotten to a place where I'm like, I love the person I see in the mirror. When I look in
Yeah.
the mirror, I love this person. Um,
Yes.
and so yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
It's a wonderful thing, and I think it's a privilege that not many people take the time to embrace
Mm,
because it's a gift that you give yourself.
yeah.
To love the person that you are and to look back and say, would that have made me a better person? Would that have made me a different person? Would that, and maybe one decision differently would have shifted certain things. Maybe you
Mm,
might not have met your wife, might
yeah.
not have learned the lessons that help you with your coaching now.
Yeah.
There's so many things that when we live a life with regret, we can't see the joy and the light of what's next in life. And I think that also plays to that inner critic, that place to our mind telling us, well, it's never going to get that much better because you missed out on that opportunity. You should have saved more money back then. You should
Hmm.
have done this, this, this. You could have done this thing. And I think the way you just put it is so perfect. And I think there's so many people who could learn this lesson and embrace it because notice it had nothing to do with you being a millionaire.
Yeah.
It had
Yeah.
nothing to do with you, not saying you're not going to be, all the dollars,
Yeah.
you're going to be a whole empire, right?
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with what society typically tells us is
Mm,
associated with a level of success and loving
mm,
yourself. It has nothing to do with physically altering who you are outside of if you decided, hey, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to work
mm,
out, I'm going to do this thing, whatever that is contributing to you feeling better. But it
mm,
has nothing to do with so many of the societal standards that we're chasing, because in this generation it's said it's well and good, and in the next generation it's not going to be so well and good anymore,
mm.
and you
Yeah.
keep following that, falling for anything, you never stand for anything.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate that. And so, one of my last questions to you then, what does wellness mean to you?
Mm. Such a good question. Something that I've been really leaning into
Hmm.
the last, like, I would say learning it the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But I read a really transformative book recently, on a solo road trip I took last week, couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
And it's the Nap Ministry Manifesto, or Rest is Resistance, the manifesto by Trisha Hersey. She's the founder of the Nap Ministry,
Hmm.
um, whole platform built on rest as liberation.
Mm.
And when I think of wellness, that's what I think of.
Yeah.
I think of rest. Um, I said earlier that the human body is like complex. Human beings are so complex and nuanced and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we have been designed, we've been made, we're created like these machines that can rebuild, that can like fix itself and
Hmm.
different things like that. But we live in a society that like constantly tells us to push, constantly tells us to go, constantly tells us to create, and
Yes.
especially as an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Um, and so when I think about like the best thing that I can do for
Hmm.
myself, and especially after reading that book, is to rest. It's
Yes.
countercultural, right?
Yeah.
To say no, to be in spaces that are fulfilling and, encouraging and
Hmm.
um, uh, challenging and stuff like that in a good way, right?
Yeah.
So when I think of, yeah, well-being, I think of rest. I think of like
Mm.
the recovery that takes place when I just like lay down. I don't even have to sleep. I just lay down, close my eyes, or I read a book, or I stretch. I just move
Mm.
slow. Um, that is like taking care of my well-being. Like that's taking
Yeah.
care of my health. That's taking care of myself. Um, and when I think about like even going back to your last question around like would I change anything, and all those different things, like I think that again, it's the this connective tissue between like
Hmm.
um rest and regret, or all these different ideas of like views of self. Like I've gotten to a grounded place because
Yeah.
I've finally entered into a space where like I'm embracing rest, I'm embracing
Hmm.
myself with compassion.
Hmm.
Um, Trust me, I still work very, very hard, very,
Yeah.
very hard. But I also rest hard, and I'm intentional with my
Mm.
rest, and I see the difference in who I am when I
Yeah.
take care of myself in that way. Yeah, and and one of the transformative things that Trisha Hersey says, she says that rest isn't a luxury. Rest
Hmm.
is something that our bodies know how to do. Rest is something that
Yes.
like is innate. It's not something that we have to earn. It's something that we can be in.
Right.
Um, and I think that that message is, yeah, it's just like it's been reverberating and like echoing in my mind the last couple of days. So, or the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks since I finished that book. So, uh, long answer, short question. Told you that, yeah, but that's what
Rest.
well-being means to me.
Yes, rest is so important. Rest, it leads to recovery, it leads to a reset, and just normalizing rest. And, in entrepreneurship, we say, okay, I'm going to do this for myself so that I can make my own schedule. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden, we're starting to fall into a trap of like, oh no, but I need to get this done and then this done and then this done. I'm still on the journey to having a 4-day work week.
Yeah, I
And
was supposed to have one like 18 different times. So
See, that's it. That's it. And so that is still my goal before the end of this year. It's gonna happen. And
Mhm.
so I'm trying to find like different resources of like how do I realistically do this? How do I schedule my time and life and all of this to make sure it's done? But then one of the things, I don't know if you're familiar with Graham Cochran.
Mm,
He is this incredible, just like business guru,
mm,
super down to earth. But he was talking about how, he went from he had like a music background. He was doing really well in that journey of his life. Dropped that business, started another business, and in his business he wanted to just kind of 10x his experience and move into something different, and
mm,
really following a lot of that 80/20 rule essentially. But for him to get to the level of which he is now, he had to get rid, like a ruthless get rid of
mm.
so many things that didn't even matter anymore.
Yep.
Things that he, not that didn't matter, but just didn't serve the purpose he was going towards.
Mhm.
And so for him, that even meant like doing a lot of like one-on-one client work and things that he
Mhm.
was doing. But his focus then shifted to courses.
Yeah.
And so that's what he does. So if you go on his YouTube channel, he's going to tell you a lot about courses and building courses and email lists. And that's all he does now.
Yep.
Literally all he does. And he does really, really well for himself as a result. But
Mhm.
in the meantime, every single week, he's on a 365 book. No, not 300. Gosh, he's reading a book a week. So 52
Okay.
book, 52
Gotcha.
book a challenge for
Mm.
the year. And so every single week he goes through one full book, and he'll
Mhm.
give you a 10-minute synopsis the following week of
Yeah.
that book he just read.
Nice. Yeah. Love that.
How many of us are making that time
Mhm.
to read the book? Because one, it's beneficial for him. He's learning a lot. The 10-minute synopsis, then I go and do that because I've been reading the same book for 6 months
Yeah.
straight,
Yeah.
and I can't get through it. And I start another one. Then I go to an audiobook. Then I forget which audiobook I was listening to or what chapter I was on.
Yep.
But I just love that dedicated focus of like, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm.
And this is what I'm going to put my all into and find
Mhm.
success in that. But then here's also this other thing I'm going to do to continue my knowledge and share this with you. But I'm not selling you anything. I'm just sharing this knowledge. And I think that's part of what you and I do in sharing podcasts. The
Yeah.
podcast, we're not selling you anything, just bringing you great guests, talking about some really cool topics,
Yes.
humanizing our experiences. Like that's
Yep.
it.
Mhm.
That's really it. So I just love that. And I think the more that we rest and prioritize and shift our focus, there'll be some really good things ahead. But Jonathan, I know, as I said, we could go on forever,
Yeah.
probably went over already,
Yeah.
but just wanted to, in this last, minute, wanted to hear from you, how can our audience get in touch with you? How can they stay connected with the work that you're doing? Maybe they have an interest in some of the services you're offering. I'm definitely linking the podcast. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
free, mention that again, but like how do they connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you go Jonathan Dumas, Dumas, uh, and I think it's like MS because my master's degree, so MS, CPC. You can link it in the show notes too. Sometimes
Yeah.
I have a hard time finding myself. I try to Google it one time. But like yeah, I'm on LinkedIn where I'm most active. Or you could,
Hmm.
join the email list. I have a um career joy like email course that I created, and it's just
Hmm.
5 weeks where I walk you step by step um each part of my career joy framework, just free
Yeah.
of charge. I'm redoing the worksheet, so it's a little bit more valuable for folks as they navigate that 5 week
Hmm.
space. But it's just helping people, think differently, and view their career journey through um what they were feeling and experience when
Hmm.
they were experiencing some of the things. So it's a really fun
Yeah.
course that I created. So you can go to heyjonathandumas.com and you'll have access to that as well. But that's
Mm.
how folks can tap in with me. You're gonna tap in the podcast again. That's highly visible and a little misunderstood. You can find it everywhere. But that's where I'm at. Yeah, thank you so much again for having me, Nicole. This was so fun. Always an absolute joy talking with you. Um, and yeah, this pod is an incredible space, and I know folks get a ton of joy and fulfillment and encouragement from it. So thank you for creating it and going into this
Yes.
thing courageous and daringly.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. For those of you who don't know, when I was getting ready to start this podcast an entire year, maybe a year and a half ago, thinking about it, I went to Jonathan. I said, Jonathan, like I told you, I went through a series of folks. I was like, okay, Jonathan, I need to know you're doing this. Like, what do
Yeah.
I do? Where do I go? How do I start? And he was so helpful in just giving me all the keys, all the tools, and in just such a giving way, which it's still resonating to this day. So and you gave me one of my first opportunities to to be on a podcast
Oh yeah,
ever,
that's right. Yeah.
ever,
Yes.
so I am forever grateful. And this was one of the most utmost joys to turn right back around and have
Yeah.
you on my podcast. This
Love
was
it.
so much fun, Jonathan. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
What are your thoughts? Put them in the comments. What did you take away from this episode? What also did you really enjoy hearing about? What would you like to have more of? Do you want to see Jonathan back to talk about some more things? It's just such an important conversation. So I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode.